to the Grace Hour, the live international talk radio ministry of Greater Grace Church in Baltimore, Maryland. You can join us on the air today by calling 1-800-338-7060 or 410-483-3700 from outside of the United States. Now, here is our host.
And welcome to our Tuesday show here at the Grace Hour. I'm Pastor Steve Andrulonis, your host for today. With me in the studio, Pastor Tom Schaller, pastor of Greater Grace Church in Baltimore and Greater Grace World Outreach. We're coming to you live from our studio here at 6025 Moravia Park Drive in East Baltimore. And we're grateful that you're with us, watching us maybe on Facebook Live or YouTube, listening to us on Positive Talk 1230 AM WRBS in the Baltimore area. Again, I'll repeat those phone numbers if you missed them at the front end of the broadcast. 1-800-338-7060, toll-free number in the U.S. and Canada. We'd like to hear from you wherever you are in those environs. Also, the local number here in Baltimore and a number that you can use if you're outside of North America to call, 410-483-3700. We'd love to hear from you and hear your thoughts on our theme for the week, which is God's heart in the home and at school and really everywhere. We got off to a great start with Pastor Steve Schaller yesterday about the heart of God and how the heart of God spoken in the church can be brought into the home, and that heart can be expressed in school also. So we believe that God has a great thing to do in our hearts and in our homes and in our schools. Here at Greater Grace, our school that is on the campus here opened yesterday for our in-person learning very carefully and specifically in accordance with the guidance that has been offered from different sources. And we're just believing, God, that that's an important thing, that the students would have a great time to relate to their teachers and to each other. And this has been a very interesting, unprecedented situation for everyone involved. And we hope that our words today can encourage you and help you. And we hope that this connection over the internet and over the airwaves is something that builds you up in your most holy faith. We're the Grace Hour. The grace of God is our hope, and we're so thankful for it and for the finished work of Christ. And listen and learn today. And the message today will come from Pastor Schaller. And then at that point, when he is finished, you can make your comments, post your comments at Facebook Live, post your comments on YouTube. We'll read them as they're relevant. And, of course, call with the numbers that we gave you. So here with this message for this moment is Pastor Schaller.
We're choosing to use 1 Samuel chapters 1 and 2 for our text today. And we read here that Hannah couldn't have children, prayed fervently, and in her heart said to God, I'm going to give, if you give me a child, I give the child to you. The child was born, and that was Samuel, and he became a great prophet in Israel and very important in their history. But when he was a little boy, and she brought him to the priests and to dedicate him, and then also made him a coat. It says in 1 Samuel chapter 2, verse 18, Samuel ministered before the Lord being a child. And that in itself is a good lesson, that Samuel ministered to the Lord, and he was a child, 4 years old. I believe that was the time when he was brought there to the tabernacle, as his mother had pledged that he would be given to the Lord as a minister. And, sometimes, Pastor Steve, we wonder if children can minister to the Lord, but they, even being very, very young, as was the case with Samuel. And he was girded with a linen ephod, like something the priest would wear. And then his mother made him a little coat and brought it to him from year to year. It looks like she made a coat every year, different size, because he was growing. And when they came up with her husband to offer the yearly sacrifice, she brought with her the coat so that he had a coat. And I always have thought of that coat as a covering for his ministry, even though it may have been more utilitarian, but we don't know that anyway. The ministry does require a covering. And as he was growing up, the coat was also replaced with a bigger one. And in a way, the ministry needs to be that way, that a child grows up and he needs a covering for where he's at. Like if a child is 4 years old, I don't give him a ministry for a 14-year-old, but I minister to him where he is at, and according to his age and his process in the process of developing, he needs something according to his particular need and where he's at. One statement by James Dobson: children are not casual guests in our home. They have been loaned to us temporarily for the purpose of loving them and instilling a foundation of values on which their future lives will be built. We see that in this story, that Hannah did not think of her son as just somebody, a piece of the furniture in the house, but he had a mission. He had a calling. She gave him up, but then also we are thinking of children being given to us, loaned to us, for the sake of their training and their development. This foundation that we give to them as they grow up is critical. And we know that these young ones can be downtrodden. They can be taken advantage of. They can be forgotten. They can be abused. They can be defeated. They can be hurt. And yet, as parents, we all know how much we are born to love them and care for them. And we are trained in our personal lives to have hearts like the heart of God, so that we can really care for these fragile, vulnerable children that are put into our homes and into our schools and into our churches. And so we have another quote here: the footsteps a child follows are most likely to be the ones his parents thought they covered up. That's right, by James Dobson. I don't know how true that is, but that's interesting. That, we may be covering up problems, but it might be that those problems are going to come home to roost. It might be good to learn to be spiritually minded as parents, and to look at things in a mature way, and to learn how to deal with our children and help them as they grow and learn. And there are a couple of very fundamental things. And Pastor Steve, maybe you can help me with this message today. And that is, how important is it for children to have a personal talk with their siblings, with their parents, about problems that they face in their lives.
How important?
Yeah.
Well, I think every child needs to know that they can speak about anything at any time with the parents. I think that's a big deal, that there would be the door would always be open, that the chair would always be at the table, open at the table, that that you would be able to hear. The child would know that he would have a way to be heard by the parent on any issue. I mean, you don't want issues to go underground or into the back rooms. It's like if you let issues go underground and into the back rooms, then it may get away from the child who doesn't know. He feels like he can't talk to his parent about a situation, about difficult issues. And kids today have way more information than any other generation. They get information from all over the place now, and they have questions, maybe bigger questions, or maybe different questions that were never asked when we were children. And that's an interesting time. But as a parent, it may be frightful and fearful to think about some of the things that a child would say to you or ask you about. But keeping the lines of communication, letting them know that they're free to express themselves without condemnation and without interruption. Sometimes, it's easy for us to maybe interrupt. Maybe my wife was really always good at just being quiet and letting the conversation start and come out of the kids when they were children.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe I was more forceful, interrupting, trying to, say what I wanted to say before they said. But I knew that she was very, I remember her being just very quiet and allowing, waiting for them to express themselves. And they always felt that they could express themselves. So I think that was that's, being a team as a husband and a wife and a mother and father, that's always a good thing.
How would you relate to what we were saying about Hannah making a coat for her son, every year?
Yeah, I think you're right. You said it's like a covering for his ministry. I mean, this is can children minister to the Lord? We know that we don't know. It's not really told us in the scriptures there how old that Samuel was when he heard the voice of the Lord, but it may have been before he was age 10. And I think you're right that Hannah's coming every year with this garment was, it gave him a sense of security that he was being thought about. You figure the environment that Samuel was thrust into, two of the sons of the high priest, that was basically his foster father at that time. The other two guys, his foster brothers, were sons of Belial, right? Doing, and the temptation or the temptations that were all around him, and the fact that he was in this place of great influence and authority in Israel. And then the mother, just knowing that the mother was thinking about him, baking a garment every year that fit him for that season of his life. That's, I think of it like it's probably a great, as she stitched, did she pray for him? I'm sure. She prayed for him before she had him. She prayed and promised the Lord she would turn him over to God for whatever he wanted to use Samuel for. And then I think that garment was just like you said, it was like a physical reminder that someone cared for him. Your mom cares.
And that's it could also be in time. We have your mother, critical relationship. Your dad, you've got your family. You have, if that is failing in some way, I still can learn who God is. There can be the youth pastor, the local church, a youth group, another, a mentor that I could find that needs to help me get through some of the juvenile irritations, juvenile reactions that that happen in life. I was reading about this in a book about basic youth conflicts, and I'll read this to you. Mother and I were riding home from the grocery store. I must have been following the car in front of me too closely. This is a teenager, and wasn't prepared when he stopped. I realized his car was slowing down. I braked lightly at first, then harder to avoid hitting him. Mother's in the, riding next to him, and she said something to the effect that I was showing off by trying to stop right on his tail. Most of the groceries on the back seat toppled to the floor, lemon pie, etc. I felt resentful, but as usual didn't say anything. So the teenager, this is an illustration of a teenager having a moment with his mom, and there's irritation. Like she's irritated, and then she says something that irritates him, and he holds it in. What would you say, Pastor Steve? You raised a family, so there are moments of irritation with parents and children. Period.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it just happens.
Just happens. Usually about the age of 2, a child realizes that they have a will and they can express it. No is a word that they learn pretty early, and there can be some contention there, especially as they get older and start thinking more and more for themselves and getting more and more influence outside of the home. I mean, that's why I'm saying that the home has to be like sort of, I would say that the best kind of home situation is where that, like that one, the kid did he feel the freedom to like argue with his mom?
Or talk.
Or just talk.
Yes.
I didn't like the way you talked to me that way. Can you say that? And she could say back, well, I didn't like the way that you were driving.
Right.
And there could be like, and it becomes more like, in the early days, and my children are not my friends. I never tried to be my children's friends. When they got to college, they were more friendship, but I was still paying for college, so they were still sort of my responsibility. But now my children who are in their 30s were friends. I mean,
Yes.
I'm their dad, and but we talk about things as more or less equals, as opposed to me telling them, I have certain wisdom because I've lived longer. I'll be 60 in a few days, 30 days to be exact. But now there's a friendship, and I think that grows like at a certain point when you're 16, 17, 18-year-old. There's the conversations are different.
They have to be more mature, and you're more like an adult.
Yeah, and
But to be able to say to your mom, maybe you decide not to say anything and you hold the anger in, and then you may have the talk later, or or not at all. But this book is about really having a personal walk with God as a teenager, and being able to instead of react to your mother, like respond to God in such a way that you actually, find the fruit of the Spirit in your life. And like you said, it has 3 responses listed here. Thank God for the irritation. Since I'm dedicated to God, I belong to Him. God is bigger than the irritation. He can stop it. He wants the best for me. Therefore, it has purpose. So that's like a great thing to teach a teenager, that instead of like getting into an emotional interaction with your parent, maybe realize that, okay, this is upsetting to me, but I can process this. I can recognize it as an irritation. I can identify the causes of it, in number 2. And then number 3, determine ultimately the objectives. What qualities does God want to develop in me? How is He using this irritation to force me to develop these qualities? Like, I could use this to say, maybe God wants to teach me love. maybe he wants me to teach me to be patient. Or like in your illustration, your wife is saying, maybe God wants to teach me to be quiet so I could hear my children talk freely in a safe environment
Mm-hmm.
and not be in hurt or in danger because I'm going to be emotional or blow up regarding the thing. So the point of our program today is simply to say that that raising children and having a heart for God in my family has a lot to do with my own life in my local assembly, where I can be taught and I can learn how to care and communicate and talk with my kids.
Yeah. There's a psychological, psychiatric sort of discipline element here that you could introduce, and seems like it's introducing there is like the idea of conflict resolution, which is like the child has some resentment, the teenager has some resentment towards his mother because of what happened in the driving lesson. And does he resolve that conflict, or does he allow it to percolate inside of him and become something that is fixed in his heart? And I think that's, conflict resolution is also a spiritual principle. Like, the idea of lament and complaining to God is all through the Psalms. And I think that's the way that David and the other psalmists taught us as people to resolve our conflicts. And even if we can't have the one-to-one with a person-to-person conflict resolution, we can certainly resolve the torturing that's going on in our own soul. When our soul is disquieted, we can try and shift the soul to having a hope in God, Psalm 42, 43, 44, somewhere in there, right? And so the child learning that to resolve his conflicts either through a discussion or through prayer and talking to God is like a very healthy thing to develop.
Mm-hmm. Wow, what a great theme. The name of the program, can you repeat it for me again today?
God's heart in the home and at school.
Yeah.
We're thinking, we're thinking because this is the time when schools start, and whether you're educating your children in the household, at home, with computers, or maybe you're homeschooling, people who do that's a great adventure. It's a great commitment, and it might be the exact perfect way for you to develop your children, because you should know your children that way. And so the heart in the home, the heart in the school, and we have a good news club here that during normal times goes into public schools in the neighborhood around our church here in East Baltimore, and they teach the Bible, and they're allowed to use the school property and the after-school time, and to invite children to come and hear a Bible lesson. And it's been a great thing for the ministers who do it, but also we've heard great reports from the children and their families. And some have visited the church, but that's not the real point, that we would add church members. It's a side benefit. But
it comes to my mind, don't lose the big picture, like a parent, a good word for parenting. And I think you and your wife have, your comment about your wife is maybe at the heart of this point. That is, I don't want to lose the big picture of what we're doing. And James Dobson said, this era of raising children will pass so quickly, and the present stresses will seem insignificant and remote. How true that is,
Yeah.
Yeah, like the stresses of the milk spilled, your teenage daughter was in a car accident or a flat tire, or somebody didn't wake up to go to work in their little part-time job, or this one a teenager lied to the parent, and these things that happen in the life of young people, in the lives of young people, maybe now we can't really remember with so much detail and not at all any pain about it, but just remember vaguely. But he said, but what will matter to you at the end of life will be the loving relationships you built with your family and your readiness to meet the Lord. I mean, maybe you raise your children not to walk on the grass, but did you teach them anything else?
That's a good question. Or not to walk on Mr. Jones's grass.
Yeah.
Because he may come out with a rifle or sick his dog on you.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah, but then lose the big picture.
Yeah.
What would you say is the big picture?
Well, I think you want like I said, you're not your children's friends when you're young, but you really want them to be your friends when they're older. You really want that kind of relationship to be deep and transparent and honest and, free. That's what you want. And you want to have that. You want to have dinners where the grandchildren are running around the table while you're talking and you're laughing. And, Dad is the butt of many jokes because he's made so many mistakes, and that they could enjoy telling the stories about Dad and that kind of thing, and not fear that Dad's going to shut down and walk to the other room or, walk down the street and never come back.
Yeah.
I think that's the thing, is like the connect. I think like you said, that coat illustration, what was Hannah doing and what, her husband's behind it. When we transition here, we're going to transition in a minute to the second part of our program. We can talk about maybe the hidden hero in the whole story of Samuel and Hannah, which is the father, Elkanah, thinking about how he is purposing to lead his family, even though there's some trouble in the home and there's some trouble in the nation and there's some trouble at the church, at the worship center. So that music means that it's time to say so long to those listening on WRBS, but Pastor Schaller and myself, Pastor Steve Andrulonis, will continue our discussion at Facebook Live and YouTube and at gracehour.org. Tomorrow, tune in. We got a special adventure for you. It's going to be a Women's Wednesday. We'll have a couple of moms here talking about the home and God's heart. Don't miss it. Thank you for listening. Grace Hour, we continue. You're online with us. Thank you for staying with us wherever you are. We know we got listeners in London and Baltimore, Gloria, Teresa in Baltimore, Julie in London, Melanie in Mexico. I believe that flag is Mexican flag. Steve and Deborah watching from Ghana, and all the rest of you who are there. Let us know where you are. And again, if you'd like to talk to us, share your thoughts on this subject. Maybe you have a tip or two or a testimony to share about motherhood, fatherhood, child rearing, the heart of God in your home or your church. 1-800-338-7060 is the toll-free number in North America to use. In Baltimore and internationally, use the 410-483-3700 number to connect with us. Thank you for being a part of us here on this first day of September, a new month here at the Grace Hour and everywhere, really. It's a new month everywhere. In fact, I think it's the 2nd of September in parts of the world already. So, Pastor Schaller?
Yeah, Pastor Steve, I think sometimes this phrase, the priest in the home, a priest is a mediator, an intercessor, a facilitator, overseer. The priest is a minister to God and in the home, meaning, this is like his place of ministry in the home, and the priest is in the home, meaning the dad, and in the case of the dad's absence, the mom must act as somebody that's overseeing the home, and the home has to be holy. The home is holy, and the priest is making sure that it is. When Job had his large family with 10 children, he prayed for them on a regular basis that maybe one of them has cursed God in his heart. I don't think it even says it with his mouth, but in his heart.
Yeah.
So he was a man that cared. And of course, that's almost inevitable. If you have 10 children and somebody is going to curse God in their heart, of course, that's like part of the sin nature of man. So Job was a good dad, apparently, in that way, right?
Yeah. I mean, he understood that there are things going on in people. All human beings, there's something going on in people's hearts, and it could be that their attitudes are out of order. And how do you handle it? And just those prayers, those offerings, like, Job and then Hannah. Hannah making the little coat for the son she turned over to the tabernacle, and the high priest and his family, and Job making these offerings for his children. Just thinking like, now, did Job's offering save his children? No, they had to glorify God themselves and recognize their need for a redeemer. But I mean, that's, him praying for them, that their minds would be centered on God and not be cursing God. That's a big part of the life of a parent, the priest in a home.
And if you think of the absence of the priest in the home, there's a home, but there's no priest. And I don't mean by this Catholic priest or a religious priest in that way, but we're talking more about the heart of God in the family. I have to call something wrong when it's wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Can you give me some examples where you would, as a man or as a woman, where you would say, this is wrong? Priest has to say, this is a leprosy. This is defilement. This is you've handled blood. You've violated the law. You've eaten shrimp. I am the priest in the Old Testament who is saying you are unclean. So if there isn't any of that, if there isn't any instruction, there isn't any governance, then what will happen in the family? And give me some to-date examples of that.
Oh, well, some up-to-date examples.
A 12-year-old, I'll help you. A 12-year-old boy is looking at pornography on his iPhone.
Yeah, that happened.
In the next room.
Yeah.
And in my house.
Yeah. It's like, one of the most interesting things that ever happened to me, and it happened, your daughter's a hair stylist, and she used to be at this place where I go to get my hair cut, and the person who was doing my hair, she had found that one of her children had downloaded something or logged into one of these sites, pornography, and like, how do you deal with it? It was like really kind of interesting, because you got these people sitting around you who aren't really concerned, but they're talking to me, asking me questions about, what do you do about that? How do like this? Do you confront it? And I think, if you don't confront it, what could happen next? What could be the disaster that person enters into? A boy looking at pornography and seeing it, his way of thinking about women is forever changed. It's like, there's healing by the Holy Spirit. There's healing in the church. There's healing from God and forgiveness and repentance and everything like that. But like, if that is not, that really is going to turn the way a man looks at a woman in terms of her value. And it's, a person has to be aware of what's happening. A parent who is unaware of what's happening in the home is playing with a lot of fire, in particular today, because
like you maybe have like little rules that for your family when you're growing up, do we swear in the house? Do we use the F word? Do we litter? Do we throw garbage at the window? Do we take our shoes off when we enter the house? Do we approach mom? Do we punch somebody in the stomach? One of the siblings? Do we, hurt each other? Do we plant? Do we do dangerous things in our house that would hurt each other, like playing with, guns or acid or poison or, there are rules. What is the meaning of a priest? A priest in the house of God, and what he understands about how things should be in the house of God.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I'm not talking about religiously primarily, even though behind it is spirituality.
Yeah.
The spirituality is the key, but what happens when there is very little definition in the house?
Chaos, I would say. Chaos. It's just, if there's no definition, if there's no boundaries, there's no.
How about lying?
Lying is a.
Is it
you gotta confront
tolerated?
it. No, you got to confront it. You got to be exposed. You can't do it. All men are liars.
What about hatred?
Well, that's a big thing. Hatred, correcting perceptions and prejudices. Our children grew up in the city. Our children played in basketball leagues where they were the minority. Two white boys playing with, 38 black African American children. So, that introducing that, like, there's no difference between us, and that, that happens young. I would say that, like, if you are, that's where this idea of fighting racism, prejudice, that kind of thing, that kind of carnality, is really, the home is the first front of that. Like, how do you teach kids that kids who look different from you are just the same as you, and that's a big thing. And, not allowing, the prejudices to be whatever, what it is promoted or discussed or expressed, and correcting it at once, because you don't get so much time. If that's fused in them, then they develop these kind of stereotypes of people. And, like, someone wrote it, some racism is taught, it's not, or learned. It's not like in kids at once, but recognizing difference is,
Yeah.
we know that things are different, and we know that the diversity of God and the difference is, like, important part of God's kingdom and a part of his purpose and plan. So having children embrace differences, different cultures, your
Yes.
kids lived, or some were born overseas and they were in different cultures. They had to adjust to that. And, like, I'm sure around your table, we don't talk bad about the people who are our neighbors because they talk different. That was like, I think that was a rule for your teams too, right?
Sure,
Because you're
sure.
from America, you're a mission team, and you don't talk bad about the culture you're around.
Right,
So those
right,
kind
right.
of disciplines, what do they, it takes
So
just,
let's say you have sorry for cutting.
go
you.
ahead, no.
Let's say you have a teenager, they're going by the rules of the house, and then there's something that's kind of getting buried underneath, and they're like hiding it. Maybe it's a personal sin. Maybe they are secretly looking at pornography, and they know in the house that's not allowed, but it happens. That there is some resentment and hatred. Maybe there's somebody in their class that has embarrassed them, or a teacher that has shamed them publicly, and they have real issue, and it's kind of buried in their heart. So it might be, as a priest in the house, to use that phrase, it might be that I am aware
Yeah.
of that my child is going through a time where they have something in them that is bothering them, and that there is something that sooner or later I'd like to know what it is. And sometimes the women in the house are very good at finding that out.
Yeah, they
Can
are.
you
Yeah, their antenna.
bear witness to that?
Their antenna are different, right? Antennae.
Yeah.
Their sensitivity to things is different. And I'm sorry.
Dumb.
We're basic human men, and we also understand that women are different from us, and that's true. The science is settled on that. The biology is settled on that. Women sense things differently because of their makeup, and it's just they do. The thing that you're saying about the priest there is like when we read Leviticus, which is the the guide for these operations that happened in the temple and the tabernacle. There is that section, a couple of chapters there about leprosy, and it's leprosy of the skin, something that comes out of somebody that's gotten into the person's bloodstream, and it manifests itself in scabs and scales, and then ultimately deadness in the limbs, right, and extremities. That's one thing. Also the leprosy of clothing, that's covered there. There's things that and then also the leprosy in the walls, the mold, and everything in the house. It's like if you are the priest, if you were in the Levitical priesthood, people brought their problems to you all the time, and you were expected to get close to people who were lepers and examine it. Like, is that really a spot of leprosy, or is that just like a burn that's, and you were discernment, that kind of thing. And I think all of these things happen in the household is like, are you aware that there could be something bubbling up inside of your child that's going to come out as a plague of some sort in their personality? Or could they also have exposed themselves to something that gives them a physical demarcation? And you should be like aware of that. Why is your child all of a sudden like sleeping 80 hours, when it used to be up and at 'em, those kind of, you're right. As the priest, you are like aware of the congregation, and you're aware of what they're wearing. That's a big thing. Yeah. Anyone who has a daughter is where's the rest of your dress?
Yeah, right.
That kind of thing,
Yes,
and that kind of thing. And then what households are you entering into? Like, it could be that, no, we don't let you stay overnight over there. Here's why. And no, we need to have a conversation about this, and this is why.
Very good. Yeah, I think that this is it's a great phrase, priest in the house. That's a very good phrase, and the pastor in the church, and we, in this discussion, we are realizing that people do have a right to privacy, that they do have their own heart before God, and they also are free to make bad decisions. So we know that too, that when they're 3 years old, we don't want them to make a bad decision when they're 3, but when they're 13, they have more freedom to make a bad one.
Yeah.
Like when you're 3, you cannot go in the street. That you cannot make that decision. I make that for you. You cannot go, But when you're 13, you got to decide, all right, okay, so anyway, let me go to the next thing. And that is that you were talking about, that where I was going with it was there's something buried in the heart, and we were saying that maybe the woman in the house, the mother or the dad, may be able to discern and recognize that, there's something that needs to be brought out it has to be put out, it has to be brought out. Like the boil has to be lanced, yeah. The problem should be brought out, and we should talk about it. And you could find buried in, a child's heart is something that maybe it does need to be like brought out and exposed, and apology, and some more clear understanding of what the problem is, what happened, the misunderstanding, or the so sure. That's good. That's a good point.
Yeah,
and you were saying that by way of the priest recognizing the leprosy in the warp and woof of the garment.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're in the
the thread
mortar
of
and the
your
stone of the house.
yeah, and the
But
thread of your child's life. There could be, I mean, being very aware of what's going on. And you're right, like having the table and the communication and being able to draw that out of them instead of leaving it in them. It's like the resentments or hidden secret sins that need to be confronted, need to be exposed. And there's like the priest in the home is one thing. I think priest is pretty important, that role, because we know that with the priest, once there is the offering or once there is the repentance, then the issue is over. But it could be, I could see myself being like a drill sergeant or more of a prophet like in the home, where I am like saying, do this my way. And it's like, and always pointing out the error and never offering, never being a priest and offering the opportunity for change and repentance and release from the burden that I could expose on a child, Like that's why I think that's an important word from that book, is to say that being a priest in the home is the right role for a father and the mother, instead of being like certainly there are moments of prophecy when you want to point out error and things, but if you're only speaking, like you've probably counseled people that their father never thought they never did anything right? You've had somebody in your counseling session where
Right.
and the root of all of their angst and agitation is because they had a father who didn't express love to them, So
this chapter, The Priest in the Home. By the way, Sebastian, the internet is down, so are we only just talking to each other? Oh, it's good? Okay. So it says, it shall come to pass when your children say unto you, what mean you by this service, the Passover? With that you shall say, it is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt, when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses. When your children will say, what does this mean? Exodus 12:26 and 27. And then the parents need to answer. Maybe we could say, when your children ask you, Mom, Dad, why do you believe in God?
mm-hmm.
Mom and Dad, why do we go to church so much?
Yeah.
Mom and Dad, why are you reading the Bible? Then what is our role?
Well, our role is to say we found it. I would say we found that it's been profitable. We've learned the effect in our lives, and we found that it's created a security, a sense of security. Because Mom and Dad could be wrong, but the Word of God is eternal. And to church life, you could find comfort in church life if Mom and Dad go off the rails, that kind of thing. That's why I think of Elkanah as the secret hero. Here he has some turbulence in his home with his other wife, who is like mocking Hannah. And then the country, the whole nation of Israel is in turmoil because there's no king and everyone's doing what's right in their own eyes. And then you have Schaller, where the tabernacle is, and the priest is not managing his own family, and there's like trouble there. But, Elkanah keeps doing what he was taught to do, bringing his family to the temple, the tabernacle, that is, to make the offerings. And Hannah prayed. Hannah, even though there's so much turbulence in the home and in the nation and in the worship center, even though all that trouble is there, Hannah still felt that was a place of prayer for her. And, I think the other kids may have learned that. We don't know anything about the other children that Hannah had, but I'm sure they were raised in the same way and the children of the other wife, they all had to come and be a part of the family worship time, so, yeah.
Yes, this parental relationship, I mean, I know you know it, and we have many amazing families in our church family, and I mean, I just enjoy seeing the Hofsuses and just Cole bands and just the Shabellis, and just I just enjoy seeing Andrulonis, his and Hadley's, and there's many. At the GGCA at our school, there's Barry Quirk, and he does a great job. All the teachers, and it's just amazing. Palmieri's, the Nyes. I mean, how many families have been committed to God and to the church, to the body, and then the children, and the relationship that parents have with their kids is so strong. It's so strong. It's your flesh and your bone. These are extension of you, and this is a great gift. It's a great blessing. So what would you say to like a single parent who is really kind of struggling to raise her family and to train her and to have the courage, the strength, the conviction to say when something is wrong, it's wrong?
Yeah, that's you're on your own there. If you have a church, you have a church life there. Maybe you could connect with some people who could help encourage you in that. Help your children choose their friends wisely. Be aware. I mean, there's a famous child psychologist, John Rosemond, who was raised by a single mom, and he was not a believer. He wrote a book when he was not a believer called the 7-point plan for raising, or the 6-point plan, I think it is, for raising happy, healthy children. One of the major points is limit screens, TV. That's one thing. Watch the TV watching. But he described how his mother, had a vision for her own life, and so she had a vision for her own life, and she made sure that her son knew how to choose friends wisely, and she encouraged him to be with his friends and not she didn't try to be like a mother hen so much. At first, yes, but once the chick was able to, like you said, once at 3, you don't play in the street, but at 13, we teach you how to cross the street and have some discernment about when a car is coming or not. And you're allowed to go over to your friend Mark's house across the street when at 13, but not at 3. But he talked about it's the principle is the same. Is the important element in the home is the relationship with the father and the mother. The important element in a single person's home is that person's relationship with God and the church life. And church life can put you, the fatherless are put in families. That's what it says. He sets the fatherless in families. So that can be a great place, to find some comfort, encouragement, and people to talk to about the issues that you might be having. And, it's not, I'm happy I didn't have to do it on my own. I don't think I could have done it on my own. And, I think a single person, they are welcome in the church. The church, more than any other institution, the Christian church, more than any other institution, allows for a person's singleness to be maximized and their potential to be maximized in a setting where families are around them. And
when I say this phrase, good cop, bad cop, what comes to mind?
That means that there's 2 people that, usually if you want ice cream and mom says no, she's being the bad cop. So we'll let dad be the good cop, and he'll say, what can it hurt? That kind of thing. That you might get something, or it's dad. Dad is the bringer of bad news.
And what's the value of it, or what does it mean?
I don't really like it so much. I think I think there should be, unity in the whole thing. There's consistency to it. So
yes,
if there's a way, if the rule in the house is established by the parents, then there is no good cop, bad cop. It's one rule.
Yeah.
And we live under it. And I think good cop, bad cop just perpetuates an idea of trying to get your own way apart from the apart from the rules,
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and actually, it can be that dad is, let's say dad is the soft guy in this family, and he's a soft guy, and maybe on a certain day, that's when I need is a real soft guy,
Mm-hmm.
and it might be mom's tough, and it might be I need a tough person.
Mm-hmm.
So the benefit of having two parents is that actually I might, and I mean, this is all, there's many varieties, but I'm just like thinking about how a child has two parents,
Mm-hmm.
and there's the heart of God in the family, and there can be a way of working out problems, and sometimes it's being tough, and then that's balanced by being kind, and sometimes it's just being like very kind and maybe too kind, and there needs to be a tough line too.
Well, you've read Proverbs a lot, so it seems to me like whenever there's like the father sets the law and the mother applies it. I mean, I'm trying to think like when it always seems to be father, mother, father, mother, father, mother, all of the Proverbs that relate to that, both of them are in the picture in terms of forming the character and the practices of a child, so I think you're right. It's like God's wisdom was that there would be that male and female he made them, and there's a reason for that.
Okay.
Be fruitful and multiply.
Maybe that's what I'm looking for.
And it's like
not so much bad cop, good cop, but just the fact there's a chemistry with the feminine and the masculine elements.
And just some tough elements.
Let's give a good word of encouragement to every parent out there that's listening to the program.
That's true. Yeah.
What are we saying? Don't beat yourself up.
That's right.
Learn to live in grace.
There's a lot of grace.
God is with you.
That's right.
And God can use you, and we will learn little by little.
That's right. And you could always, today we didn't take any calls. But we've talked a lot, and you could listen to this program, and maybe it'll help you in the future. And maybe you want to learn more about the Bible. And I'll give you a plug for Maryland Bible College and Seminary, which starts a week from today. A week from tonight, you could go to mbcs.edu and find out more about it. You could be in class next week with us. We got great teachers, great subjects. And for Pastor Tom Schaller, I'm Pastor Steve Andrulonis, and our engineer, Sebastian Palmieri. We want to thank you for listening and being a part of the program. Facebook Live, YouTube, and also on the radio. Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks for listening to The Grace Hour. Our live program airs weekdays at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Grace Hour is a ministry of the Greater Grace Church. You are invited to visit Greater Grace at 6025 Moravia Park Drive, Baltimore, Maryland, 21206. For more information, go to gracehour.org or call 1-800-338-7060.